This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below.
All right, it's that time of the day. It's that time of the day where I look at your hot takes from the comment section on these YouTube videos. So let's go ahead and jump into it. See what you guys are saying in the comments. See if y'all being nice to me. You know, sometimes y'all don't be nice to me. So I got to see if y'all being nice to me today. This video, the Browns will rest their starters versus Cincinnati, was a reaction to the action on Sunday. The comments here from Kelly Bale, who says, hard disagree. Okay, the Browns need to burst through the playoff banner. They can't do that resting guys from already depleted roster. Now, if you have a guy on defense due to injury, you rest him to be safe, but that's one, maybe two guys? What? Nothing to play for is just an old lie that totally discounts momentum. It's why I feel good about a second round matchup with Baltimore. They will be cold. Okay. All right. One, I believe in momentum. But when people start saying stuff like, oh, if you don't do this the game before, it won't carry over into next week, I feel like people misunderstand the concept of momentum. Because momentum is a real thing, but it's not a magical thing. And when you think, oh, if you play good in week 16, automatically you're going to play good in week 17, it tells me there's a misunderstanding of what makes momentum actually happen in a football game. Momentum is energy, right? Like you get momentum, and what we call momentum is energy. It's something feeling like it's going downhill. Now, what creates energy? Execution. Okay, so if you execute well, you get more energy. If you get more energy, it appears that you have more momentum. But how do you get to execute well early in the game? Well, how do you get to execute well? You execute well early in the game. You can do whatever you want at the end of week 16. Once you get to week 17, you got to start that momentum back up. So just because the Browns don't play a week or play all their starters 1 week does not mean the momentum is going to be gone, because guess what? The momentum resets every week anyways. You have to play well at the beginning of a game to carry over any momentum. You can play well at the end of a 4-quarter game, come out for the next game, stink in the first quarter, momentum ain't going to carry you through that first quarter. You got to execute in the first quarter. So hopefully I got that point clear. Momentum is not something that can be carried over week to week. You got to have it at the beginning of games, or you got to just manifest it in a game to create a run. And what manifests momentum? It's very, very, very plain. Execution creates energy. Energy is momentum. If you execute well, you'll have more energy. If you have more energy, you'll execute better. If you execute better, you'll have more energy. That's momentum in a football game. That can't be carried over through a whole week of practice. So the thought that like, oh, the Browns won't have any momentum because they're resting their guys for 1 week is silly, because whatever momentum they had in week 18 could be gone if they start the wild card week with a 3-and-out, because none of that momentum from the end of the game carries over to the next week. You got to create your own momentum at the start of every game. So one, yes, I believe in momentum, but that's what momentum is. You have to be able to explain how it happens, and that's how it happens. Two, like, because if you explain it any other way, you're making momentum this magical thing. It's not a magical concept. It's a very physical, actual thing that we can explain. So that's my first issue with the comment. The next thing is the Browns need to burst through. Oh, there's only two guys you think need to sit right now because of injury? I disagree with that, man. I disagree with that. And Baltimore, I mean, like, look, there have been teams that took the bye week, they've came out cold, and we overhype it every time that it happens. But we don't ever say shit when a team comes out at the bye week and completely blows somebody out. Momentum is created in a game. If Baltimore starts that second week, that matchup in the second round, and they have a good first drive, that momentum will carry over. If they turn the ball over early, they're going to look cold. But that's what momentum is, man. That's my at least my 2 cents on it. Next comment comes from Rye Guy, who says, from a strategy and logic view, it makes perfect sense to rest your guys and give them a bye week, especially after a long season, where our bye week was so early in the season. I think this is our best bet. Now I see where people would be opposed to this, especially considering the last time we made the playoffs. It was clinched in a game where the Squealers were resting their starters, then followed by them starting horribly slow in the wild card game, where we beat the brakes off of them. My reply to thinking that would be that we didn't beat San Fran after resting our starters for a week and playing PJ. Okay, yeah. So his reply to his own comment would be, then we beat the San Francisco 49ers after resting our starters for a week and playing PJ. Yeah. Giving our guys an earned week off, in my opinion. Okay. This is another interesting one, and Ryan, I kind of agree with you on this. And this goes back to the first comment. It's funny because we act like a bye week is a negative only when it comes to the postseason. Like every other week of the season, seriously, like every other week of the season, if you're about to play a team off a bye week, you go, oh man, they got a bye week. They have 2 weeks to prepare for us and get healthy. That sucks. That makes the game tougher. Or if you got to play a tough team, you're like, hey, we're coming off a bye week. We're going to be extra prepared. Like, we understand that the bye week, having extra time, is a good thing during the regular season. But for whatever reason, you put that bye week at the end of the season in the postseason when you need it the most, and we think it's not good. There's a reason why teams be breaking their necks to get the 1 seed. That bye week is important, y'all. Like most teams who have won the Super Bowl have had the bye week, y'all. Like I don't understand why this concept is like controversial. And maybe this is a younger fan, older fan split, but we kind of understand the concept of the bye week being a good thing literally every other week of the season. Why don't we feel like it's a good thing in the postseason? We all of a sudden, we don't ever talk about, oh, we're going to be rusty coming off the bye week. We're going to be this coming off the bye week. Like, no, you shouldn't. It's 1 week off. Like, you're not taking a summer off before you play the wild card game. Like, you taking 3 extra days. That's it. Like, they're still practicing. It's not even a bye week. I don't know. I feel like people get a little bit more superstitious than reasonable about the conversations they have about this bye week. And I think if people were just being realistic, they're just superstitious. We played good last week. We played good the last few weeks, and I want to see them continue to play good. So I feel good about the team going into it. That's really what it's about. We try to like justify it with all this logic, but it's not logical. Like the logic is, if you give a football team time to heal and more time to prepare for an opponent, they're probably going to play better against that opponent. That's the logical answer. But yeah, we'll see. Back to Basics says, I have mixed feelings about sitting healthy starters. I understand sitting injured, dinged up players, but let's look at this. From the Jets game to the Bengals game is a 10-day break. From the Bengals game to the wild card weekend is 6 to 17. So he's basically saying it's a 17-day break. I don't know how I feel about sitting out healthy players for 16 or 17 days straight. I'm afraid that they'll cool off and lose some mojo. Either way, in Stefanski and AB, I trust. Again, I feel like we're being superstitious. More than reasonable. Because you know what would make somebody really cool off? An injury. Y'all be mad as hell. Joe Flacco go out there, play, hurt his finger or something, don't throw the football the same. That's actually something. Like, I get it. You don't want to live in your fears, but you also don't want to take unnecessary risk. And part of not living in your fears is also not living in your fears thinking, oh, yeah, if we don't play all of these games and continue to carry this sense of momentum throughout the postseason, that we're not going to be able to play good again. Like, this is a good team, y'all. It's a good team. And a good football team can have some guys sit out for 16, 17 days. You already know that this team has had multiple guys sit out at least 16 days this season, come back, played well. Denzel Ward didn't play for a month, came back, played well. And also, why do we think healthy players can come back from why do we think that 16 or 17 days off from playing football is a bigger issue for the healthy players than it is the injured ones? I don't know. It just, again, it's a good football team. They gonna play good, more than likely. They're a good team. This next comment section is from predicting who the Browns' playoff heroes will be. If you watch my Q&A, you would know that this was a very, very heavy theme in here. Jerome Ford has been impressive as a receiver, even after the catch. He runs differently. I would agree with that. I think Jerome Ford has had an impressive year as a receiver. I do sometimes... I just, when I watch Jerome Ford, I'm like, damn, dog, he would be great if Nick Chubb were healthy. You know what I mean? Like, that's Jerome Ford's game is perfect to be Nick Chubb's backup. It kind of gets exposed when he has to start, though. And that's why I think you should bring Dalvin Cook in here, because you can bring in somebody to fill the Nick Chubb role and then have Jerome Ford in the proper spot. And I feel like Jerome Ford would be excellent if you just allow him to do some of the stuff he's supposed to be doing instead of him trying to be an every down back, because he's not. My guy CTG says, I feel like this team hasn't even reached its full potential. There is room for improvement in the offense, as I think Kevin's play calling will only get better with the playoffs come. I think the defense can reach another gear, as well as crazy as that sounds. I'm excited. Yeah. I mean, play calling is one of those things where, like, either Kev's hot, he's in the zone, he's in the rhythm of the game, he's really calling every play is just working. He really has like a good read on everything else that the team's doing, or he could be a little cold. But yeah, I think there is room for improvement in the offense, not from the play calling standpoint, but just from, Flacco being more familiar with the personnel and the personnel being more familiar with him, and them finding ways to get the ball to each other, just being more creative with that. And the defense reaching another gear. It'd be interesting to see how teams decide what their playoff plan for Miles is, and if the Browns have the personnel on hand to be able to break those playoff plans, because that's going to be interesting. One of the most intriguing things to see this season, this playoff season. Yes, the Browns should sign Dalvin Cook. This next comment section, my guy Bailey Cundiff said Breece Hall runs pretty well behind the bad Jets O-line. I believe there's a lot of advanced stats about Cook's rushing this year, and they aren't good. All right. So we have learned nothing from the Joe Flacco experience, right? Because this is an argument that I was using against Joe Flacco earlier in the season, where I was like, hey, Joe Flacco's older. Look what happened to him in New York. That should happen in Cleveland. What we did not factor in, or what I did not factor in, was Joe Flacco hadn't been practicing all year, so he was pretty fresh coming off the couch. 2, best years in the Gary Kubiak system. This was a return to what he was doing his best at. 3, how familiar the personnel was to what he had in his glory days in Baltimore, and how easy of a transition that would be for him to kind of get closer to what he's been in his career. Now you look at Dalvin Cook, and look, I'm not for just signing names to sign names like, oh, let's just go get Justin Houston because that would make us feel better. Because I do feel like at times we want these big names because the big names make us feel better, right? Like a Zeke Elliott or somebody like that. But Dalvin Cook is a little bit different because a year ago, he was an 1,100 yard rusher. Now, I know that analytics people have us believing that one day running backs can run and make good decisions and break tackles, and then literally a day passes and then everything is gone. Like, I know that we have been fooled into believing that. I don't believe it to be true, though. If he was capable of having 1,100 yards last year on pretty decent efficiency, he's probably capable of still being a decent running back. It's probably the scheme and what he's asked to do within the scheme in New York that's the problem. It's likely how he was coached in New York that's the problem. And that's the situation. And you bring him back to somebody who he's literally been in the same offense with. I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt that you get something similar to what he was in Minnesota versus the shell of himself that he has been with the Jets. We can't throw out a player's entire body of work because they gave you a few bad games. We do this far too often, where we just take the last 2 games of players that played in and just throw out the whole body of work. We do this far too often in sports talk. I mean, like, how many times have we sat here with Deshaun Watson? He had a bad game. Oh, man, he's never... Like, we've done this so many times with our own players, with other players. Like, not Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy done went from cooked to MVP. Well, he went from MVP to cooked to MVP, and now he's somewhere back between cooked and, we slept on Brock Purdy. Like, we keep doing this, man. We keep allowing 2 games, the most recent sample, to throw out a player's body of work. Some of us, I did this with Joe Flacco. At some point, I feel like I have to learn a lesson here and not throw out somebody's body of work simply because they had a couple bad games. Remember how people thought Randy Moss was cooked in Oakland? It turned out the issue was not Randy. Now, if I see a player can have 1,000 yards rushing a year ago, and then this year they got 200 yards rushing, and then I'll watch the New York Jets play, and I think to myself, boy, that's not a well-ran team. Why is it that I think that all of Dalvin Cook's issues are exclusive to Dalvin Cook? Right? Like, we all acknowledge that the Jets have kind of been funky this year. We all acknowledge that, hey, man, they haven't been doing the greatest job there. And we all acknowledge that Breece Hall is a special talent at the running back position in his prime. Like, yes, of course he looks different than Dalvin Cook running the ball. We're not asking Dalvin Cook to come here and be Breece Hall. We're not. So if all of those things are true, we don't trust their coaching staff. We don't trust their offensive line. We don't trust their offensive line coach. We don't trust their run game gaps, their run schemes, all of this stuff about the Jets operation we don't trust. And we do trust about the Cleveland Browns. Why not give it a shot? I feel like you can get some of that old Dalvin out of him. He might not be 5 yards per carry. He might not even be 4.7, but he might be able to get you 4.4 or 4.3. And that would be almost double than what we've been getting recently. So this can't forget that the man rushed for 1,100 yards a couple years ago. Not even a couple years ago, my bad. Last year, we talk about that, like, we're talking about Dalvin Cook as if the last time he was good was 2005. Like, he was good last year. Like, he did not tear his ACL. He did not have an Achilles tear. He did not have a major injury. But somehow we believe in the 12 months from last year to this year that he has completely lost all of his athletic ability. That don't sound ridiculous to y'all. Like, basically, the explanation would make more sense if you legitimately like explained this to me as, I don't think we should sign Dalvin Cook simply because the Space Jam monsters took all his talent. Because that's what we're saying is like, hey man, in 12 months, he ain't got nothing left. And I'm sure somebody gonna pull out some outliers of guys who got cooked at the 12 months, and they're gonna try to make it seem like I'm wrong here. But I feel like if the brother could run the football for 1,100 yards 12 months ago, he's probably gonna be good enough to run the football for you right now. It's probably not him. It's probably the team that we think is kind of a dumpster fire. That's my thoughts on that. Next comment is Explore Ohio says it's only one article from Heavy, but it states that Cook is frustrated with the Jets wanting to go younger, which got him a very reduced role. It's possible he wants to be reunited with Kevin Stefanski, which is another reason he would fit with the Browns when it's at the end of the day, a season moving towards the playoffs. There's familiarity with Kevin and running the team. Also, it's something I talk about all the time. This kind of continues the tangent I was on earlier. How many times do I sit here and be like, football is a workplace? And one of the things that matters at your workplace when it comes to how productive you're going to be over expectation, because we all going to get our job done, but we talking about over expectation, like how much you're going to overachieve at work. It has a lot to do with how much you like your job. And Dalvin Cook right now has a job he hates. He don't like his job. They told him he was going to be in this rotation. They sold him a book of lies, and he's frustrated. He don't like going there. You're not getting the best out of Dalvin Cook. Now, if the Browns sign him, give him a role that he's happy with, you're probably going to see something very different from him. And if you don't believe this is a thing, Jadeveon Clowney. We thought he was cooked, right? We did the whole thing. Oh, Jadeveon's cooked. He's trash. LOL, Ravens, you can have him. And he's having the best year he's had since his first year in Cleveland. Because he don't hate his job. Last year, it was obvious that man hated his job. He hated being robbing to Myles Garrett. He hated what Joe Woods was asking him to do. He hated the city of Cleveland, basically. He didn't want to be here, dog. He hated it. He didn't want to come to work no more. So he put in efforts of a man who didn't want to come to work. Then he gets to Baltimore. All of a sudden, he like working again. Bam, he putting up numbers. A lot of other things factor into this. And again, for the people who feel like Dalvin Cook aged 12, like he got Benjamin Button's disease. He aged 12 years in 12 months. I just don't buy it. I feel like a guy who was capable of rushing for 1,100 yards 12 months ago is probably still good at football. And maybe the issues for Dalvin Cook are about the New York Jets, not necessarily 100% about Dalvin Cook, which is why he's been trying to get out there for like 6 months. That's just me. And I know why people get locked into these opinions. I understand it. It's not your fault. This is kind of how people have trained you to think about the running back position. But really think about it, man. You think this man went from being able to run for 1,100 yards, 10 total touchdowns, by the way, to done in 12 months. Like his body, no major injury, nothing. Just can't do it no more. Magically. Just knees don't work. That's the real explanation that I'm getting from people right now about this subject. I feel like we're discounting literally every other factor that goes into why a player may or may not be good. System, coaching, environment, all that stuff. That's probably why Dalvin Cook's underperformed as a New York Jet. It's probably it. Again, it's just my opinion. Why winning the 12 games matters for the Cleveland Browns fans. This is an interesting interaction. My guy, CLE Super Bowl 2023 says, sports makes perfect sense, my guy. Sports are war games. We are connected very deeply to them because of this. Now, I think this was in response to me saying that, when you really think about it, sports are this thing that we kind of arbitrarily made make sense after the fact. which is just true. And I'm just confused as to why it matters if it does make perfect sense. Like, we are talking about a game in which we line up 11 people on each side to make it hard to get to a special part of grass that we painted and called the end zone. And then we're sitting back and being like, it makes perfect sense. No sport makes perfect logical sense. Sports are not the most efficient way to do anything. They're purposely inefficient because it's entertaining to watch people overcome obstacles. That's the fundamental thing. It's an emotional attachment that we have to sports. We like to make it logical on the back end. But if we were trying to figure out what's the most logical way to get this football to this part of the field, to that part of the field, it wouldn't include this many obstacles. That's my whole point. It's like, hey, we make this thing hard on purpose because that makes the sport fun to watch and it makes it entertaining to play. And it's not a perfectly logical thought process. It's more emotional. And our connections to these teams aren't 100% logical. And if you don't think your connection to this team is, well, if you do think that your connection to this team, the Cleveland Browns, is 100% logical, I'm just at a loss for words, right? Because there's no way you could root for this team as many losses as they put up over the last 20 years and feel like that's a completely logical experience. It's an emotional attachment. You don't sit through 0-16, 2-14 because it makes sense to sit through it. You sit through all of that because you love the team and you have an emotional attachment. That's all I was saying. That's all I was saying. I don't know how that was a controversial take, but hey, I said my piece. The Browns destroyed the 2023 expectations. I'm doing this before I had my morning tea, so maybe I'm just grumpy. So I apologize if I come off like that in this video. All Bean says, I'm thrilled with how the team has performed as a whole, all things considered. The only thing that's rubbing me the wrong way is how the national media has embraced the Browns as a legitimate threat this season. Oh, come on, man. I wonder what the media is saying about the Browns in a parallel universe where the team is led to a spot where Watson can rest their stars. Hey, man, all year we get mad that nobody takes us serious. We get mad that nobody's giving us our love. We like, why don't y'all talk about us more? Why don't y'all make these wins about us more? Why don't you show us our respect? And then the national media turns around, is like, yeah, you do deserve respect. And now we're like, legitimately, I feel uncomfortable because y'all giving us respect. Fandom is a crazy thing, man. And we all got it. We all got it because as silly as I think the concept is when I explain it, I understand what you're talking about, Beans. Like, I do. It's just funny. It's like we just sit here all year mad that the media ain't talking about the Browns. Now they talking about us. We're like, man, I wish Watson was back, not to play quarterback, but simply so that the perception of the Browns could be lowered to a point to where nobody will be saying nice things about us. That's hilarious. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure being the feel-good team. You know, you start to worry if you're the Cinderella and if there's going to be midnight and you're going to turn back into a pumpkin. All of these things are perfectly fair anxieties to have. But also, you know, this is a really good team. So they've taken care of business all year. I expect them to continue to be a good team. That's my thoughts. Thank you guys for commenting on every video, even the people especially the people I disagree with, and especially the people who are nice to me, right? As long as you're respectful and you disagree with me, I ain't got no problem responding or reading feedback. So I appreciate every single one of y'all. Thank you guys. Even the people who comment first when they ain't first, I appreciate y'all. Even the people who be fifth in the comment section be like, yeah, first. I appreciate y'all. But y'all have a great day. Have you a better night. Peace.